There wasn't any video when I went to grade school. It is just in its infancy. It was like VHS and Beta C, if you can remember that far back. And so in school they showed us these little films, and they showed us this one in grade school, and it was about this poem that was written by Maurice Ogden, and I thought I'd read it here. It's called The Hangman. So I'm going to try to read it and see if I can get through this thing. Into our town the hangman came, smelling of gold and blood and flame. He paced our bricks with a diffident air and built his frame on the courthouse square. The scaffold stood by the courthouse side, only as wide as the door was wide, a frame as tall or a little more than the capping sill of the courthouse door. And we wondered whenever we had the time who the criminal with the crime, the hangman judged with the yellow twist of the knotted hemp in his busy fist. And innocent though we were, with dread we passed those eyes of buckshot lead, till one cried, Hangman, who is he for whom you raised the gallows tree? And then a twinkle grew in the buckshot eye, and he gave us a riddle instead of a reply. He who serves me best, said he, shall earn the rope on the gallows tree. And he stepped down and laid his hand on a man who came from another land, and we breathed again, for another's grief at the hangman's hand was our relief. And the gallows frame in the courthouse lawn by tomorrow's sun would be struck and gone. So we gave him way, and no one spoke, out of respect for his hangman's cloak. The next day's sun looked mildly down on roof and street of our quiet town, and dark and black in the morning air, the gallows tree in the courthouse square, and the hangman stood at his usual stand, with the yellow hemp in his busy hand, the buckshot eye and a jaw like a pike, and an air so knowing and businesslike. And we cried, Hangman, have you not done yesterday with the alien one? Then we fell silent and stood amazed. Oh, no, not for him was the gallows raised. He laughed a laugh as he looked at us. Did you think I'd gone to all this fuss to hang one man? That's the thing I do, to stretch the rope when the rope is new. Then one cried, murderer. One cried, shame. And into our midst the hangman came to that man's place. Do you hold, said he, with him who was meant for the gallows tree? And he laid his hand on that one's arm, and we shrank back in quick alarm, and we gave him way, and no one spoke out of fear of his hangman's cloak. That night we saw with dread surprise the hangman's scalpel had grown in size. Fed by the blood beneath the shoot, the gallows tree had taken root. Now as wide or a little more than the steps that led to the courthouse door, as tall as the writing or nearly as tall, halfway up the courthouse wall. And the third he took, we all heard tell, was a usurer, an infidel. And what, said the hangman, have you to do with the gallows bound and he be a Jew? And we cried out, is this the one, he who has served you well and faithfully? The hangman smiled. It's a clever scheme to try the strength of the gallows beam. The fourth man's dark accusing song had scratched out comfort, heart, and long. And what concern he gave us back have you for the doomed and the black? The fifth and the sixth, we cried again, Hangman, Hangman, is this the man? It's a trick, he said, we all hangmen know, for easing a trap when the trap springs slow. And so we ceased and asked no more, and the hangman tallied his bloody score. And sun by sun, night by night, the gallows grew to a monstrous height. The wings of the scaffold opened wide, till they covered the square from side to side. And a monstrous crossbeam looking down cast its shadow across the town. And through the town the hangman came, and he called in the empty streets my name. And I looked at the gallows soaring tall and thought, there's no one left at all for hanging, so he calls to me to help him pull down the gallows tree. And I went out with right good hope to the hangman's tree and the hangman's rope. He smiled at me as I came down to the courthouse square through the silent town. A supplement stretched in his busy hand was a yellow twist of the hempen strand. And he whistled a tune as he tried the trap, and it sprang down with a ready snap. And then with a smile of awful command, he laid his hand on my head. You tricked me, hangman, I shouted then, that your scalpel was built for other men. And I no henchman of yours, I cried. You lied to me, hangman, foully lied. Then a twinkle grew in the buckshot eye. Lied to you, tricked you, he said. No, not I. For I answered straight, and I told you true. The scalpel was raised for none but you. For who has served me more faithfully than you with your coward's hope, said he. And where are the others that might have stood side by your side in the common good? Dead, I whispered. And amiably murdered, the hangman corrected me. First the alien, then the Jew. I did no more than you let me do. Beneath the beam that blocked the sky, none had stood so alone as I. And the hangman strapped me. And no voice there cried, stay, for me in the empty square. I'm sure we've all heard or even said these words. What have I got to worry about? I've done nothing wrong.